Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of The Handmaid's Tale, Season 6, Episode 4, Promotion. This was directed by Natalie Light and written by J.C. Heldrich. I want to start with everything going on with Lawrence and Janine in this episode. So, with Lawrence, Angela gives Lawrence a little drawing she did. He says it reminds him of work of Helen Frankenthaler, who is an abstract painter that he says, real wife, Eleanor, loved. A lot of Lawrence's mindset is coming from still grieving the loss of Eleanor in this episode. And you're seeing that connection he's actually building with little Angela over Eleanor. And also that connects to Janine. He'll read Angela, the Little Princess, which was Eleanor's favorite book at the end of this episode, which we're going to get to. But you see that Naomi is trying to come on a little to Lawrence now. And she's like, they derive their sense of power from their fertility, talking about the commanders. And he says, power will come from reform. They know I'm their man. So he doesn't think he still has to participate in all these other side things that commanders are expected to do, like reproducing at the moment. And you see that he is actually knighted into a high commander. This is where we'll meet Timothy Simons, who you know from Veep. He is now a commander, and he wants to celebrate this occasion at Jezebel's. Wharton won't go, and he actually keeps Nick back and saves him from going, even though Lawrence wanted Nick to go with him. But it actually shows you that Wharton isn't interested in that outside of Gilead's norms type of party. Now, we'll see at Jezebel's Janine, a.k.a. Kitty, and she's being forced to sit on this commander that Timothy Simons playing, and he knows that Janine was Lawrence's handmaid at a time. So he offers her to Lawrence on his special day. This gives us a moment to see Lawrence and Janine together, and Janine's obviously pissed that she's sent there, but Lawrence tells Janine that it was going to be the wall or a slow death for her in the colonies, so her best bet was at Jezebel's. But he gives her the drawing Angela made, which was nice, and something to give Janine some hope. And Janine is worried about Angela's future in Gilead. And Lawrence says he will do everything he can to keep her safe, which I truly believe Lawrence means that, and especially how we're seeing him connect with Angela now. Now, him reading that book, A Little Princess, he's encouraging Angela that she'll read it herself one day, keeping to those beliefs and dreams of New Bethlehem. And you see Lawrence starts choking up a little reading it. I think there's a lot to that. I think there's the emotions of it being Eleanor's favorite book, but also about the future for Angela here, and also what happened with Janine. Now, that book, A Little Princess, is important because it is a story about this Captain Cruz who is actually separated from his daughter early on in the book, and she goes through a life that starts off good and gets really bad and then eventually gets good again. But the book ending, she's not reunited with her dad, but she's learned a lot along the way. And that character, Little Princess, actually, if you read about it, her name is Sarah. She reminds me a lot of Janine. It's a character that goes through a lot, but is still kind to everybody along the way. And then at the end of her story, even though she gains wealth again, that she's good to people and she takes care of the less fortunate. I feel like that could be Janine's future. This could be foreshadowing Janine's story and her from the start being the little princess in the story of The Handmaid's Tale. Now, it also could just be foreshadowing going on with Angela, and that she's separated from her mom and Janine, and that maybe they don't get reunited one day, and she has a similar story to Sarah going through that in the future, maybe in the Testament. So I don't know which way it's going to go, but I'm really scared because the next episode is titled Janine. So anytime you have a character's episode titled after him, they usually die in that episode, but maybe that won't happen. Either way, it's going to be really interesting. It's the final season, so something's going to happen here with Janine, and I'm really, really excited and nervous for next week. So I'd love to hear you guys' predictions on what's going to happen in next week's episode with Janine. But I really enjoyed Lawrence's story in this episode with Janine, even though it's small screen time. Everything they're doing with Lawrence this season is excellent, and they're setting the stage nicely for him to fully kind of come around now and do something right at the redemption arc at the end of this show. Now let's go to everything going on with Mayday. And you see June's like watching Luke make these plans of bombing, and he's like, yeah, we're just going to roll in. And you could see June's very judgy of everything going on. Like, look at these amateurs in a way, because she's been through this all. She's the most experienced here with what goes on in Gilead and doing attack. I also love they throw in at the beginning here that Tulelo just comes in and tells Luke that his case has been dismissed. So it's like, okay, we're out of that trap officially now from season 5, that they're totally dropping that story of Luke getting arrested, which kind of thinks funny and obviously the right move. Now, it's not the reaction that June thinks Luke's going to have, like, great, I can just go now and be in Alaska with both Hollies. But Luke informs June instead that he's supposed to drive in the bombs and he's going to stay. He's like, it's my turn now. And June at first is like, Holly needs us, my mom needs us, we have to go back and build a life together. So she's basically, lying to herself. She's lying and trying to believe this is the way to go, but she knows the reality and she knows herself, and that obviously she's not gonna be able to just do that. But we also meet this leader of Mayday, and her first plan is to kill the commanders at Jezebel's, and June's very skeptical here. And I like that June has to actually stress to these people to get the woman out, and there's one guy who's just like, well, that's just the times we're in, it's like, dude, come on. But Moira volunteers herself to go, because she knows Jezebel's the best, that's where she was. But this is where June goes full June, where she's overprotective of everyone around her and thinks she can do better, and you just roll your eyes like, come on, June. Where she's like, Moira, you're not gonna go. She's like, come to Alaska, we'll have a life together. And Moira, thank God, says to her, I can't live your life anymore, because you see that Moira's just always, her life story now been revolving around June's life, June's kid, where I'm glad Moira's separating from that. Now, what's going to make June flip out is in a printout of the woman in Jezebel's they see Janine's there. So this really reverts June to her own ways. Not only is she telling Luke and Moira to back off and not do this, now she wants to take care of it herself and go. And she's going to tell the Mayday commander this. She's like, I'm going to Jezebel's. And she sells it as it's better for her to go because she has a commander on the inside and she won't panic. So she's left to tell Luke and Moira to basically hit the showers. And they basically say it's disrespectful that she's doing this. And she's like, well, you hid from me for months that you were doing all this stuff with Mayday. And they were like, well, we thought you'd freak out like you're doing right now, which is totally true. And you see, I love this line they write where she says, you do not know how to fight in there and you will not survive. And Moira says back, you think that little of us? What a great line. And Luke hits her with a great line too. He's like, this isn't about us. This is about what you want. Truth is, you want to go in, you want to fight, which is totally true. She was kind of just waiting for her excuse, which is now Janine. But you see Luke's like, this is my chance to finally fight for Hannah. So this is a big thing for Luke and wanting to do this. And then you'll see after this argument later that night, he says to June, if you have to go in, then go in with me. Like, they come to this agreement. Let's just both do it. And June's talking about the feeling he's having as she's been there. It's like a high that she's saying that you feel going for Hannah and excited that you do this, but it really hurts when it doesn't work out. And she's like, I guess I was trying to save you from that feeling, basically. And June talks about she had an idea, wanted to be a family in Alaska, but Hannah is just not there. So it's always the thing that's driving her guilt and wanting her to go back to Gilead. And she says, feels like when we lost her that it broke us, broke me. Luke says, we are a broken family, maybe beyond saving, but I already got one impossible dream. I got you back. So he's pointing out that the impossible can happen. It's already been proven. But then June is real with him and says, even if the Mayday plan works, it doesn't mean we'll get to her. Luke says, yes, but we gotta try. And she's like, yep, we gotta try. They exchange our I love yous. You get this storm happening at the end. So I felt like this whole episode was the calm before the storm, and that now we're going into the storm here at the end of the episode. And it going to the end credits, hearing the storm, and then hearing Lawrence reading this passage of the Little Princess to Angela, which I just talked about. But I think this whole episode is set up for the second half of the season that we're already getting to. And a lot of stuff's about to hit the fan, and I'm really excited. I hope it delivers. I hope it delivers way better than Game of Thrones did, where they had a big final season, calm before the storm episode, and then the storm, you couldn't even see what was happening on screen. So I hope the Handmaids does this right. And I feel like it's obviously going to kick up next episode into the storm with the title of Janine as the episode. Now, I really am just happy we're kind of moving away from Moira, Luke, June, anybody when it goes in Canada where they're all just talking about getting revenge and fighting and doing this and debating different things. It feels like that's finally ending and we're going to just get to the action now with it and get into Gilead where the most interesting stuff happens in the show, period. So I'm excited for that. And I think, again, this is a slow episode. It is all set up here. It's going to be a forgettable episode, but I think it's going to pay off huge in the next couple. This is just one of those episodes when it's a week-to-week release, you really feel it. But before we wrap up the review, let's go into everything with Rita and Serena. Now, Rita arrives at New Bethlehem, and it's interesting to see other people having these reunions at New Bethlehem. So you're seeing Lawrence's vision working out. But she's greeted by Serena, who is informing her that Nick and her pulled strings to get Rita's sister there, who is Gia. So we see they reunite. It's a nice little moment. But the big thing that happens here is we see Rita and Nick reunite, which has been a while. So Rita says she'll stay because Nick promises that New Bethlehem is safe for now, and that's his job anyway to protect it. And he basically tells her it's going to take a year or two to get her whole family out, and she's willing to wait. So Nick's really being a hero here, helping not just June out, but now helping Rita out and doing a lot of right things. So again, I think this is all just showing you that Nick and Lawrence have been working together even through their fights, I think, are very staged to protect their alliance, what they're doing behind the scenes, that all this is going to come full circle with Serena, Lawrence, and Nick, that they are going to do a huge good thing here with New Bethlehem and pushing some wins here for the people we love in this show. And it's cool they have Rita in New Bethlehem because then it sets her up to be part of this storyline with Serena, Nick, and Lawrence. Now, Serena and Wharton have pie. He's telling her that every child deserves a chance, not just the children of privilege and how many kids he wanted to have. And Serena says, once New Bethlehem expands, we'll set Gilead back on God's path of light. No family should endure what we had to. So basically taking that New Bethlehem vision of reform and then bringing it into Gilead where they're still doing the old messed up ways. And they're reflecting how she didn't have a voice. And he says to her, a better man would have encouraged your influence. So you're always wondering with Wharton, is he just saying this to get into Serena's pants? Or does he mean this? Is this man a little more progressive than Commander Waterford? I'm not going to call that yet because I still don't trust him for a second. Especially because he is a high commander. And he has very traditional values and how much pressure he puts on Nick in general. Now, Wharton and Serena have this walk. He brings up he coveted Serena at the ball in D.C. In that episode, we saw her dancing with Fred there. So he says he can finally have her dance with her, and they dance awkwardly in the street where we hear music, but I don't think they're hearing any music. So very awkward, but very fitting for a character like Serena. And this is interrupted by Aunt Lydia, and we don't see more of this. So it's going to be interesting to see what Aunt Lydia says to Serena here about, obviously, going to be about Janine and what she can do about it. So maybe Serena actually helps Janine here. We'll see what goes down, but I'm excited for that. It all just, again, adding to that setup feeling in this episode, so not a lot of stuff going on. So, again, this happens in shows like this. I'm going to give this episode a 7.5. I think it's good setup. I think it's really short. I think it could have been a little longer, honestly, especially for a setup episode. Just give us a little more to it. But, I mean, look, here we go. I'm excited for the second half. Again, this episode is hard to review because it is that place in a show that is a transitional episode setting things up, and it's just not the most memorable, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, like, I just can't wait for next week now kind of episode. I'm not looking back at this episode like, wow, like that was great, or I remember that moment, but it's making me excited for what's to come. So I think it did a decent job at that. So I'm going to give it a 7.5. I want to hear your guys' theories, your thoughts. I'm really worried about Janine, but maybe they'll trick us because they know she's a fan favorite and she'll survive. Who knows? And maybe she'll get reunited with Angela, and we're just going to have to wait and see. But it's really crazy to think there's only 6 episodes left in this show. I mean, that's it. So I feel like we're going to get all these stories of characters starting to wrap now, and it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. So let me know your thoughts, and please check out my interviews I did with the cast. I got to interview Yvonne and Strahovski. Please check that out. I also interviewed Madeline Brewer and Dowd, and I did red carpet interviews. They're all linked in the comment section below. It really helps all the support. I appreciate all you guys. Praise be, and I'll see you next time.